Morgan J, also known as Kitty Clash, and today I want to talk about an example of disability representation done wrong. And I don't mean this to be coming from a place of like, rah, 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 you did bad. I mean it to be coming from a place of like, hey, I want to give genuine critique in the hopes that the Neopets team will do better, because I like that like disability representation is better than it was when I was a kid. I think that there are definitely strides being made towards improvement over time. I think that's awesome. And so I just want to be providing feedback on how to make it even better, you know? For those of you who don't know, I am autistic, and I have been playing Neopets since I was like 8 years old, so that's why I feel like I really want to comment on this particular post and give my opinions on it. So on Sunday, July 14th, 2024, Neopets put out a post on their Facebook page that says, "Have you heard of Service Petpets? This little cat is here to help. Do you have any real-life Service Petpets?" And then there's a little emoticon that looks kind of like two little paw prints, and it says, "Happy Sunday, Neopians." And the image that they have is of a Kadoatie. That is a Kadoatie. It's a Petpet on Neopets, and I would say it more or less resembles a cat. And the Kadoatie is wearing a vest that says for Service Petpet, and then it has NP on it, which I think stands for Neopoints, and it's got like this little blue triangle, and it's got like a little star badge, and it says emotional. And the Kadoatie is seated on what looks, I suspect it's a hospital bed because it's got like metal rails, and it has a little spot on it that looks kind of like a label, almost as if it's demarking the bed as being occupied by a certain person. So to me, that would suggest probably a hospital bed rather than a bed at someone's home. And then there's also a flower, like some flowers in the corner and a card. So that would suspect to me that it's the companion of someone who is like in the hospital setting. But yeah, I wanted to talk about this. First of all, because I don't think that this is a good representation of a service animal. And I'm going to explain to you why. And I'm also going to be referencing some pages from the Americans with Disabilities Act website, ada.gov, their page on service animals, as well as their page on ADA requirements service animals. And service animals are dogs. Just as an FYI, I think miniature horses might also, in some circumstances, be considered be able to be considered service animals. And they can be any breed and any size of dog and trained to perform a task directly related to a person's disability. Service animals are not required to be certified or go through a professional training program or required to wear a vest or other ID that indicates they're a service dog. And that's really the first reason that I was just like not really happy with this Kadoatie, is that it's wearing a service pet vest. And to me, I feel like it kind of like sends this message that a service animal must be wearing a vest to be considered a service animal, when in reality that's not true. Service animals are not required to wear a vest or other ID that indicates they're a service dog. Like some people with disabilities might not have a vest on their service animal. And so you should not assume, like you should never assume that a service animal is not a service animal because they aren't wearing like what you'd expect them to wear. Service animals are not required to wear a vest or other ID that indicates they're a service dog, at least not in the US. And keep in mind, I'm not a lawyer. I'm just someone speaking from my lived experiences as someone with a disability, and I'm trying to properly cite sources as much as possible. So yeah, I didn't like the bright, flashy vest, because to me, it felt very performative. It felt performative. It felt almost like it's cosplay. And I would have preferred to see some sort of indication of like this Petpet providing a service to someone with a disability. Like, I feel like that would be a better representation of a service animal, would be the service animal providing the service that it's doing. To see it you know, doing its job. So I guess an example of that would be like a medical alert animal, or someone who's like, how do I put this? I know that there are people who have like balance related disabilities who sometimes use like a dog as essentially extra balance support. So I know that there are lots of different ways that there are service animals who provide services, and I would like to see representation of that action rather than it being presented or represented through a wearable. So yeah, the wearable aspect like really struck me the wrong way, because it's like, yeah, service animals are not actually required to wear a vest or other ID that indicates they're a service dog. And so, yeah, I think it's really important to have representation of service animals who aren't wearing vests too, just because some service animals don't. And also, I wasn't really happy with the fact that they chose a Kadoatie to be a service pet pet, because in the US, service animals are typically dogs, but they can also be, if I understand correctly, they can also be miniature horses in some circumstances. Because in addition to the provisions about service dogs, the department's ADA regulations have a separate provision about miniature horses that have been individually trained to do work or perform tasks for people with disabilities. So yeah, I think that there are also special provisions about miniature horses. But typically speaking, I don't think that cats can be considered service animals. I think they'd be considered emotional support animals. And emotional support animals and service animals are not interchangeable. They are two different things, legally speaking. So from the Service Animals page on the Americans with Disabilities Act website, more about the difference between emotional support animals and service animals. If the dog's in your presence provides comfort, it is not a service animal under the ADA, but if the dog is trained to perform a task related to a person's disability, it is a service animal under the ADA. For example, if the dog has been trained to sense that an anxiety attack is about to happen, take a specific action to help avoid the attack or lessen its impact, the dog is a service animal. So yeah, there are some differences between service animals and emotional support animals, because I think that's something that's really important to know, because service animals have a great deal of protections, like under American law. For example, like service animals, where service animals are allowed. Under the ADA, state and local governments, businesses, and nonprofit organizations that serve the public generally must allow service animals to accompany people with disabilities in all areas of the facility where the public is allowed to go. For example, in a hospital, it usually would be inappropriate to exclude a service animal from areas such as patient rooms, clinics, cafeterias, or examination rooms. However, it may be appropriate to exclude a service animal from operating rooms or burn units where the animal's presence may compromise a sterile environment. So yeah, service animals have a lot of protections in the USA, but they are different than emotional support animals. So, like, I think it's really inappropriate to use emotional and service animal, the words of those, interchangeably or to mean the same thing, because they are different in terms of legal protections. And it's really important to understand that there is a difference between where an emotional support animal can accompany a person and where a service animal can accompany a person. And that's something that's like just really important to understand, because that's something that directly impacts the lives of disabled people. And so I really don't like the way that the words are both being used on the Kadoatie's outfit. Like, it just feels like it's creating confusion or lending towards confusion in an area that it's really important to be clear about, because laws around disability directly impact disabled people's lives. And so we really need to be clear about the terminology and the language that we're using. So yeah, I wanted to talk about this. I do like the idea of like, hey, let's have representation of, I'd say, service animals. Like, I think that's a great idea. But I also think that having the service animal be a cat-like animal and wearing a vest that says like emotional and service pet pet on it is really sending a lot of mixed messages and might not be showing the clearest image of what a service animal actually is to the public. So yeah, I wanted to give my opinions on this issue. As always, I'm not a lawyer. I really encourage people to do their own research on issues. I want people to be educated on the Americans with Disabilities Act and to read up on it of your own accord, because again, I'm not a lawyer and I want people to be more knowledgeable about laws that protect people like me, you know? So yeah, I hope you have a great day.